We are here this morning to interview Carlton Coleman. Carl was born in Fort Worth.
Yes.
In August of 1947. He served in the United States Army in Vietnam. His highest rank attained was an E4, Specialist 4. The interview is being conducted in Burleson, Texas on Friday, May the 14th, 2010. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I am no relation to Carl. Worked with him for a number of years, but I have no relationship with Carl. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. And with that introduction, Carl, we'll let you tell us your history in the U.S. military.
Okay. Well, I guess it basically all started when I got my draft notice. I'd been going to college, but I dropped out for a semester. Shouldn't have, and they decided it's time for me to come. So anyway, I got my draft notice, and we were in the process of setting up getting married, you know. And so we moved up the date a little bit, because when I first just got the call for the physical, I knew something was happening, so we moved the date up. And when I finally got drafted, we'd been married 19 days when I finally left her. Which, you know, makes it kind of rough, especially financially. I was sending her $100 home every month, you know. But from there, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, where I started my basic training. And then after that, 8 weeks of basic training, then I went to Tigerland there in Fort Polk for infantry training. And spent, I guess, another 8 weeks there. Then, of course, when I finished, I got my papers, and it was for Vietnam. One of the strange things, when I was on leave, the night before I was supposed to leave, I had an uncle pass away who had basically helped raise me. My father died when I was young, and so I was told if I had an emergency, call the Red Cross, and that's what I did. And they said, well, call your CO, and I thought, well, I don't have a CO, and so they said, well, call the Pentagon. And so I swear. So this is like 10 o'clock at night, and I had to leave the next morning, so I called the Pentagon, and it was closed. Which kind of shocked me. But I got a hold of an operator there in Washington, D.C., and they said, we'll catch him again at 7 in the morning, which was 8 in the morning, 7 my time here. And so I called the Pentagon the next morning and got a hold of some guy who said he was a sergeant. As far as I knew, it could have been some guy pushing a broom, but I wasn't sure. Told him the situation. He said, take another 10 days, and I'll send you new papers. So I was sitting there dressed and everything, ready to walk out the door when he finally said that. So I gave him an extension, which kind of worried me, because I thought, you know, if this guy really wasn't a sergeant, I'm in deep trouble here, because I'm reporting. But anyway, that worked out. Then from there, I went to St. Louis and Washington, and Fort Lewis, Washington, and mustered out, caught a flight to Vietnam, and was a Southwest Orient. I was really surprised. It was a passenger plane like that with stewardesses and everything. I expected some cargo looking great, you know, taking me. So I landed at Cameron Bay and mustered out there, and of course I had no idea what I was in for. And I know when I got there, I had to be put on detail, of course, you know, during while I was waiting to be assigned to my unit. It was at the laundry room. We were getting all those sheets and all ready for the beds for all the people in there. So anyway, the guy asked me to come back after lunch, and we would take a drive down to where they washed them, which was in a naval base there. And we get in this truck, and we start down the road. Of course, we're in a deuce and a half, and there's no weapons in the vehicle at all. And we drive out the gate, and I'm scared to death, thinking, what's wrong with this boy? And I look up, and here comes a guy walking down the road in Bermuda shorts and a little T-shirt, and a Ford station wagon passes. It wasn't military. I look out in the bay, there's somebody water skiing. And I'm thinking, this is going to be okay. This is going to be a good war. And we go down and do the laundry. Of course, then a few days later, I got assigned to the 5th Mechanized Division, 1st and 61st, and they were up in Quang Tri, up in northern I Corps, close to DMZ. And then they put me on C-130, so I started feeling more like the military now, you know. So they flew me up there, and like I said, it was a mechanized. We used personnel carriers. And they, of course, assigned me my equipment, but they didn't give me any bullets the first night. I just got this empty M16, and we're sitting there in this hooch, and we're playing poker. and J's and trays, you know, the money keeps all that funny money they've given us. We don't know what it's about. It's all piled up. Well, all of a sudden these rounds start hitting the booth, the hooch we were in, and we had snipers or people in the wire. So they hollered for us to get in the bunkers. Well, here I jump in this bunker with my empty M16. I have no bullets yet. I didn't even get one bullet like Barney Fife. I had an empty gun. Anyway, it lasted about 30 minutes or so. When it was all over, went back. Of course, all the money was gone off the cot. I don't know who was brave enough to stay back there and take it, but anyway, they finally give me some weapons, some bullets. We go out and I zero my rifle, and they find me out the Bylong, I know, valley, which is up in the top of these mountains, these jungle mountains, and they drop me off there, and they don't have the personnel carriers. This first operation, they're walking, because of the weather and all that. So here I get with my zeroed M16. Well, they decided somebody needed to carry a grenade launcher, so they take me M16, give me M79, and we start humping through those wet jungle hills up and down. It's just killing the rookie, you know. But the first ambush I was on was up there, and this is probably one of the most scary moments of my whole career there. And we're up on, we have set up a kill zone on this trail at the bottom of this hill, and the rest of the unit was up on top of the hill in the perimeter. And we were 2-man positions, me and the sergeant. So he was on first watch. Of course, I didn't. We were supposed to be able to sleep, you know, 2 men, but I didn't. And so he got me up, and I'm sitting there, and I start hearing noises behind us, you know, and just in the brush, not in the kill zone. So I shake him. I say, "Sarge, got a noise." He stood up. He listened. He says, "Ah, it's just an animal." I said, "Oh, okay." I settled back down. All of a sudden, I heard this roar. It was a friggin' Bengal tiger, I guess, unless there's other cats over there. But let me tell you, the hair stands up in the back of your neck when you're in the middle of the night. You can't see spit, and this thing's roaring. Then another one screams over here. There's 2 of them. I don't know whether they're trying to mate or what. But anyway, we sit there, and he told everybody to turn around and just fire into the brush there behind us. Well, I got this grenade launcher, and they don't do any good unless they go so many meters, you know, to set the round. So it wasn't going to do any good. So I had a .45 pistol, so I'm turning around, and I'm going to kill this Bengal tiger with a .45 pistol. And I just empty 9 rounds into it. We grab our stuff, and we hook them back up the top of the hill and where everybody else is. And they kept hearing noise around the perimeter all night long. And so the next morning, we go back down where we were, and there was no blood, there was no footprints. So who knows how far that cat was from us, you know. I'm sure sound travels a long way. Oh, well, anyway, after spending a couple of weeks out there in the rain and the mud, walking up down those hills, we finally flew back to base camp. And finally we got to be assigned to the personnel carriers, so I got to ride on those, and this is in November when I went over there, so this is almost Christmas by this time. So we go out to a village out close to the coastline called Bobang, I think it was called. And we go through, and I remember the other guys that had been there a while were really treating the people rude and ordering them out of their hooches, and I'm thinking, hey guys, we're supposed to be the good guys here, you know. And I was helping these old ladies up, and what they want to do is get everybody out, check their paperwork, ask them if there's any VC there, you know. We had an interpreter with us. And so anyway, we did that. Of course, they said no VC here, you know, we're friendly, we're good guys. So we could leave that, and so we were going to, next day was Christmas. So we had to stand down, did nothing. And well, we had to pull perimeter guard for some.
What year, Carl?
Oh, I'm sorry. This was I was drafted in '68, so this was Christmas '68. I'm sorry about that. And Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, they had us pull a perimeter guard around a Vietnamese school there. I guess they was heard they was going to get hit. So we're laying there in the grass, and they're all in there singing Christmas carols in Vietnamese, which is kind of a freaky thing. So anyway, the next morning, get up, and I know I had a leech in my hair, and I thought that's a heck of a thing for Santa Claus to leave me, is a leech in my hair. But
you had hair?
Yeah, exactly. I had hair then, exactly. But anyway, then they had us actually went down the beach a ways to, I'm not sure what area it was. They'd set up a little stage, and they gave us a USO show of these, I think they were Filipino group called Black Pearl or something. I think I saw them 3 times. Every time I saw a USO show, it was the Black Pearls, you know. But I guess they didn't want no American groups ever came up that far north, I guess. But anyhow, Christmas Day, that evening, we went on another ambush, but of course it was a ceasefire till 7. So we're walking along on a trail and go set up, and we see 3 Vietnamese come out of that VC, come out of that same village that we'd been to that said there wasn't any, with their guns on the shoulder. Well, we couldn't shoot them because it wasn't time yet. This is a stupid war. But anyhow, we let them go by. And then we go up and we set up another perimeter. Of course, I'm, you know, the rookie. And it was an L shape, and I was at the base facing, and all of a sudden behind me, there's a lot of sand out there around Bow Bank. It's like sand dunes. It's really behind me, I hear a noise, and here's 2 walking behind me, you know. And of course, I turned around with my 79 grenade launcher, just watched them. I never fired or anything, because they told me don't fire until they did, you know. So anyway, a few minutes later, some more came walking up into our kill zone, and we blew the ambush. And I don't know how they got away with those. I think it was 3 of them, and we only killed 1. That just, I don't know, as much lead as we threw in that kill zone, it's crazy. But the reason I told this story is it was the first dead body I saw, you know. Because we were walking back then, and of course, like I said, this is still almost midnight Christmas Day. And I remember walking up, and I was walking backwards. I'm tail end Charlie, you know, as we started going back to the unit. And I turned around and I almost tripped over this body laying there. And I thought, well, you know, everybody got to look down and say, well, Merry Christmas. You know, this is the weirdest thing. So we went on back, and of course, next morning, whenever we blew ambushes, they always laid the bodies out the next morning close to where we were eating breakfast and all to show kill. And it got to where it was like going fishing or going hog hunting, you know. You laid it out, and there's your trophies every day. And it got to where it was exciting to see that you kill things. I know it's kind of hard for people to visualize, and kind of hard for me to realize that I would felt that way, but that's the way it was. So, but after a while, it was probably a month into that, and they came to me and asked me if I'd ever driven a truck or a big truck, and I said no. Drove a pickup once, and they said, well, we need a new driver for a personnel carrier, you know. And I said okay. So they went over and showed me how it drove and how it worked and all, and had me drive around a few times. And while I was out there practicing, all of a sudden the CO came up, and there was a river next to us, and they said, hey, take this guy across the river. And I said, no, what? And he said, well, these things float. I said, this thing weighs 12 tons. You're telling me this thing floats? So anyway, there's a trim vane, a little piece of wood that flops on the front, locks. It makes it like a boat then. And you just drive off in the water and hope for the best, and got some bilge pumps you kick on. And when it floats, the water's about 3 or 4 inches from the top of this sucker. If it goes over the top, hang it up, you're done. Anyway, I got him across the river and got back, and that night we, at least I got to stay with the unit because I was a driver now, so I didn't have to go on the ambushes. Good thing, right? Well, they blew an ambush that night. Well, when they usually do, in this case, they wanted us to react to them. So they told me to get and crank this thing up and drive out to where they were. So like I said, this is out where these sand dunes and all are. It looks like Rat Patrol, you know, the old movie. And so I take off in that thing, and I'm beating everybody to death because I don't know how to ease over bumps. And I know one time I started up an incline of sand and didn't realize it was too steep, and got halfway up, and the thing started sliding sideways. I thought I was going to turn it over, but they were cussing me pretty good in the back. Of course, they didn't ride inside those things. They found out it was a death trap inside of them because they're aluminum, and most every bullet can pierce it. And so we filled the inside full of ammo, and everybody sat on top, you know. So anyway, we finally found the unit and drove around, and I even turned my headlights on, which kind of blew my mind at times. But, so from there on, I was a driver for them, and this was probably around January, February, and we did a lot of missions up on the DMZ. I know one time there was a river up there, and I can't tell you the name, but we had to cross it. The Navy had to meet us there with a LST, is that what they call it? The front end dropped. We drove all the personnel carriers on it. They took us across the river, then unloaded us on the other side, and went up on the DMZ. And we had this new lieutenant at the time that wasn't too good with a compass, I guess. But anyway, one of the personnel carriers got stuck in this bog. So they told me to drive around front, hook up to him, pull him out. So I drive around front, I hook up to him. I take off, I sink. So then they bring a third one up. And so now there's 3 of us stuck in the stinking bog. So they take all the cables from all the personnel carriers and hook them all, and so some personnel carrier can sit up on the dry land and pull us out. And we finally got out. Well, by that time, the rest of the unit had moved on, so there was just this one, I guess it was only 4 personnel carriers, just one platoon sitting there. And the sun was going down, and Lieutenant tried to find the unit and couldn't, so we just circled the wagons in this tall elephant grass and got real quiet. And he got checking his map, and we'd gone too far north. So we may have invaded North Vietnam that morning. I'm not sure how far north, but he said we should not be here. So like I said, we hunkered down, and we got real quiet in that tall grass and just sat there all night. And so first light the next morning, we jumped on those things and hauled ass out of there. So, well, thanks a lot, Lieutenant. Let's see, I don't know. We, like I said, patrol all around up and down the beach area, which was usually pretty nice, except they'd want us to dig foxholes on the beach. Well, you dig down a foot in sand in the beach, and you just got water, you know? It just, but those were usually pretty light times. In fact, every time we saw any Vietnamese, that first 4 months I was there, they were running. We were usually chasing them, or we blew ambushes at night, because with those personnel carriers, you know, we had 50 caliber up front, we had 2 M60s on the sides, plus a 5 to 7 man squad, fully armed, riding in it, and we had enough ammo there to last us for days, you know. So I guess they just didn't want to mess with us. So finally we get a mission, and we go to Quezon area. Now this, the year before, the Marines were there, and for that large siege, they were there and got bombarded for so long. Well, when they left, in 68, I guess they were there, the early part of 68. When they left, they blew up all the bridges on this road that went to Quezon. Quezon is way over on the Laotian border. So we were basically on the coast, and we had to drive all the way over there, and it was a paved road in some places. So we got some Corps of Engineer guys, they may have been Seabees with us, and we take off on this road, and we start trying to rebuild bridges. And there was one of them, they used one of those retractable bridges. I want you to see that right along, yeah. So we rebuilt the bridges, and we drove into Quezon, the old city of Quezon there, and there wasn't much left, except you could see where the houses had set, and there'd be flower beds there, and I mean the growth, and it was beautiful. The plantations of banana trees just rode up out there, and I think it was coffee plants. I don't know, there were shrubs, probably 4 foot tall, just hundreds of them, all in nice, neat rows with these berries on it. Somebody seemed to think, but of course it was vacated. There wasn't anybody lived out there. So we set up, and of course the very first night we were set up, a unit's driving up the road to where I was. My platoon actually got assigned to a company of tanks, and we were protecting the battalion, which I thought was a pretty nice deal, except when someone got hit, we had to react to it. And so I remember we usually, by the time we got there, it was all over with. But that first night, my company was on a hill probably 2 or 3 clicks away from us, and they got hit. And boy, you could see the tracers, and what had happened was, all day long we had been chasing these people that had ambushed this convoy, so they didn't have time to really set up and build a perimeter good. They just pulled up on the hill and parked the personnel carriers, and so the Dukes hit them pretty hard, and I think it took something like 20% casualties that night on a unit, and so they had to bring in some more. Another battalion, or another company from another battalion came in to be with them. Well, what they did was the night before, they had personnel carriers they had on the what do they call it, the military crest of the hill, where they shoot down the hill. Well, they backed them up, dug foxholes in front of them, and mounted the guns down the holes. So as the Vietnamese came up the next night, they saw the personnel carriers, thinking that's where everybody was. And so the next night they got hit again. Of course, like I said, I wasn't with them, but they took 1 casualty, is all, and they killed 126 Vietnamese that next night. So revenge. And But anyway, the next time we went on further, closer to the ocean border then, I actually went past the old caisson base. And there was still parachutes hanging in trees because during the big siege, the only way they get supplies to them was a parachute. And some of the parachutes were still hanging up in the trees there by the old runway. And in the wire still around the base camp, there were skeletons still hanging in that wire from the Vietnamese that attacked. Because there were so many mines out there, nobody wanted to go even get the bodies, which I'm surprised at, because I understand Vietnamese, like us, try to go back and find your own. There was also an old Russian tank sitting there. It had been blown to smithereens. There was a special forces camp there. I can't remember the name of it, right there below the ocean border, that had been overrun the year before, right about the time Khe Sanh was hit, with Russian tanks. And it was the only time that I know of that the Vietnamese used armor. But they rolled across the LA ocean border and rode right in on the special forces camp. And guys there all bucked down they had a bunker for their communication bunker. They locked themselves in there and called in an airstrike and took out one of the tanks anyhow, and then they all hooked them back to North Vietnam. But that was the reason they called us down into Khe Sanh, is because one of the Marines said he saw a Russian tank and he needed armor and all to protect him. And I think he saw that blown up one's what he probably saw. He never saw that one. There we went to even further. We set up on a hill called LZ Saigon, we called it, and we were guarding some artillery, and we had sappers, people just shooting at us every night or so often. And one night they was doing it, and I thought everybody's getting trigger happy. But I was sitting in a little bunker with my 50 caliber, and so I hadn't shot my M16 in a while. So I thought, what, this dark, and we're just kind of throwing rounds. I didn't want to shoot the 50 because they give away the location. So I went and got my M16 and locked and loaded with a few rounds and just sprayed the jungle down. I stood up on top of the bunker like freaking John Wayne, shooting. And anyhow, it turned out the next morning, they found out by a prisoner that a battalion had attacked us that night. But their leader said, don't fire until you get inside the wire, because we had concertina wire, spread around. And we killed over 150 Vietnamese just because we were firing as we heard noise or throwing hand grenades and all. So I don't know how many I hit with that, be standing up there like an idiot spraying, but there was gooks everywhere, and that's a wonder they didn't shoot me right off that bunker. But also there was a tank next to us, and it was a kind of a draw, so he was part further back than we were. So our bunker's here, into his barrel is right here even with our. And I'd never been around armor before, So the guy says, I'm going to fire the main gun. He's going to fire a flechette round out in the jungle. I said, okay. Stuck my fingers in my ear, and he says, I'm going to fire the main gun. I said, go ahead. I didn't realize it was side blast. It knocked me off the bunker. I rolled halfway down the hill, embedded a rock in my forehead. They're all sitting there laughing at the stupid grunt, Not that we weren't professional. But anyway, we got hit 2 or 3 more times there. They never got through our wire, and so we finally got to drive back home, go back to our base, leave. And as we left, we took little pieces of C4, the guys did, as I drove back, and they would light it and throw it off in the jungle. And when we left, that whole place was ablaze. The whole Khe Sanh Valley, we had set it ablaze, trying to burn the vegetation off. Well, we came back about 45 days, month and a half, 2 months later, and you couldn't tell we burned anything. It drove back. And this was, when we went back the second time, we were going down to the A Shaw Valley, further in, and up on the hill where the A Shaw feeds into Laos as a blocking force. And I went on R&R at this time, too, got to leave. And when I got back there, they had set up there at the A Shelf when I got back. But this was when they had Hamburger Hill. That was they made the movie about, because they were fighting this hill, and we were a blocking force because they thought the Vietnamese would run as soon as they hit the hill, and we would catch them. Well, it didn't. They sat on that hill and fought to the death, I guess, because they never came where we were. So, or if they did, they snuck around us probably. But we found some lots of roads in there with 55-gallon drums of fuel where they were driving trucks through these. Of course, these roads were covered in canopies. You couldn't see them from the air. But they had fueling stations along this road coming in of Laos into Vietnam, where they were bringing trucks in to haul in there. Plus, you found footprints of elephants. We saw elephant footprints where they were hauling stuff in on elephants. Never saw an elephant, but that was probably the most vicious areas. Every time I went to Quezon, it was usually pretty bad. And then there was another area we called, after we came back from there, like I said, only once did I ever have a clean shot at anybody in daytime. Almost all of our combat was in the dark. And you just fired into the darkness and hope you hit something. Because most of the time we never got in a wire. We were very lucky. But one time they took all the infantry off the personnel carriers and made a sweep through an area and just left the driver and a guy for the TC hatch up there. And so then we were supposed to meet up with them on a ridge. So we're driving down this one ridge and they're over this other with a big valley between. And we're coming across a ridge and the front personnel carrier turned to make a turn to go across and an RPG comes right over the top of him and blows up right next to me. And so the guy just stops and jumps out. So here we're just sitting there. And CO calls, tells us, don't stop, get going. So we hook them and turn, and of course, my TC guys, he's firing, and we drive all the way across and get over with the other guys. As soon as I get there, I turn my personnel carrier and aim it back to that hill where I was, and jump out, and I don't know where the guy in the TC, but he jumped out. Well, we called in artillery, and the very first blast of artillery, this little Vietnamese come running out. Now, this is, across this valley is probably a mile. This guy looked this big to me, and he come running out of the dust. Well, I jump on that 50 caliber, and I start pumping at him, and I start hitting ground about 6, 8 foot behind him, and I'm walking that bullet right up to his ass, right? And just as I'm right at his feet, that gun quit. And I ejected a round, fired 2 rounds, and it jammed again. And the housing that bolt slides in cracked at that moment. So I figured, God liked that guy. He must have been a good Catholic. I don't know. But, you know, that's the only shot I ever had the whole year I was there in the daytime, and the darn gun broke. Monsoons would come in, and we'd stay wet for days and get stuck again. And we were, had one time we were going through, and we had some armor with us, and this tank came down. Of course, these tanks weigh 60 tons. It's some M60s. Came down on one hill, started up another, and he just sunk. And so I tried to pull him out. We only had one other tank with him. They tried to pull him out. He couldn't get him out. So they hooked up 2 personnel carriers in front of that tank, and then the tank looked like a team of horses. Trying to get one stupid tank out of it. Finally got it out. But, oh, well, it was a mess during monsoon season. Those personnel carriers just weren't designed for that mud and all. Plus, we hadn't loaded down too much. But we were up on one rocket ridge, they called it, and I was lead track for a long time. And we were driving out, and there were just craters everywhere where other personnel carriers hit mines and stuff. And this is up toward the DMZ. And I went down this one way, and all of a sudden we came up to a river or a marshy area they didn't want to cross, so they wanted us to turn and go a different way. So another guy took the lead, so we fell in behind him. He didn't go, but probably maybe a mile and hit a mine. No personnel carrier bounced up off the ground. They medevaced him out, and they just stripped the personnel carrier and left it sitting there. And in fact, that guy got a pretty good cut on his head. I don't know how bad he really was hurt, but they made him our bartender. The rest of the time he was there, he was our bartender. He worked with, I'm sure he did other things. The only thing I ever saw him do was bartend. I thought, you know, that was my mind. I should have hit that sucker so I could have been bartender the rest of the time I was there. But anyway, our colonel decided he didn't like that personnel carrier sitting out there, so he wanted us to go get it. So he's got my platoon, I got elected, and our 4 personnel carriers, 1 tank, and this big machine called an 88. It was a big towing vehicle. And we start out, we're going to go pick up this personnel carrier. Well, we get about halfway out there, and this friggin' 88 hits a mine. And this thing's bigger, about the size of this room. It blows roll wheels off of it. So we started trying to tow that thing back with this tank. And it took us all day. It was dark until we got back towing that stupid thing back. So the next day, they got another 88 and another unit, came in from different directions. The colonel was bound and determined he was going to get that piece of metal off off that hill, and I thought, you know, just bomb it. But the next guy got it back, but you know, that was his prerogative. He didn't, I don't know why he was so worried about that shell sitting out there. But we lost a lot of people and personnel carriers to mines. We were up in Z one time, and it was a Carlton Alpha 2, Alpha 1. Alpha 1 they called Carlton. It was the furthest north of any fire base in Vietnam. And from there, you could see a North Vietnamese flag flying if you got up on one of their lookouts. And we were going north from there one day, and they got me lead track again. And I'm sitting there, and everybody's lined up behind me. And all of a sudden, we started getting income. There were rockets, or we thought. Anyway, income started hitting everywhere around us. Well, I got this CVC helmet on. It's a helmet plugged in with the radio in it and all. Well, I just start climbing out. Of course, this hole sticking out of this personnel carrier. I start climbing out to go get in the bunker. Well, I didn't unplug my CVC helmet, and I got about halfway out and came to the end of my cord, and I went back into this thing head first. And anyway, I finally got it all done and got my helmet on. Of course, the time I got in the bunker, it was all over. But headed on out that day. That may have been the day that guy hit the mine that became the bartender. I can't remember now for sure, but there was a lot of booby traps and all out there. We were sweeping one time, and this place had been Agent Orange a lot, and I guess napalm, because all it was dead trees, a forest of dead trees. And if they were small enough, just because I was a young kid and enjoyed it, I'd knock them down with personnel carrier, you know. And there was one guy riding up top, and everybody else was on the ground. They were going forward. We were looking for bunkers and stuff and holes. And all of a sudden, the guy jumps off and screams. I mean, this guy screamed and jumped off the personnel carrier. Well, I thought for sure there was a satchel charge in there, and my ass was gone. And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "It's a spider." You weenie. And I dropped my chair down and looked back inside the personnel carrier. This spider's about the size of a dinner plate. I thought, holy crap. So I get out and I go back, so I can go back inside there and try to find it, and I couldn't find the darn thing. And we were shoving stuff around, and the CO hollered, "Get back in there and drive," you know. And of course, all day long, I could just feel that sucker coming up my back. But a day or two later, we finally found it. It got between two cans of ammo, and it was squashed. It was a big old. They're not supposed to make spiders that big. I see. You know, toward the end of my tour, things got a little better because Richard Nixon had come into being president, and he started bombing pretty heavy everywhere. And I know people were against that, but let me tell you, my job got real easy after that. They didn't have as many NVA in there, and of course we had a few VC, but really and truly the VC in that area pretty much got wiped out at Tet. You know, when they had Tet, which was 67, the year before I came, the whole idea, you know, of course, was to hit us at once, but they really put those poor VC up in harm's way. I mean, when they did it, they stuck it right in there, and most of them got wiped out. But we did have some VC, and it was mainly booby traps, and we would find them in holes. Out there in that sandy area close to the beach, they would take a box with sloped edges, and they'd dig a hole that was tapered. And so that box would fit down that tapered hole. And so all you could see on the top was just the edge of that wood. I mean, so you plug it up and you walked along, you would not see that opening. So we would go along the sand with sticks and poking them in the ground until we'd find these things, pop that lid up, and go down there, and there'd be bunkers for 8, 10, 12 people down underneath that sand. I don't know how they kept that thing from falling in, because like I said, it was just sand out there. But we did find some. Well, they found some one time with some people in there, but I wasn't there for some reason. I may have been coming back one time from one of the deals. I got sick. Thought I had malaria, and turned out it was tonsillitis. So I was out of whack for about 4 or 5 days. And I missed that where they found these Vietnamese in this bunker, and they told us as they came out, everybody surrendered except for this one woman. And she came out with a pistol or something, and they had to kill her. She was the only one that came out fighting. All the men surrendered. But well, I guess it didn't matter about male or female. I know one night we blew an ambush down there close to the beach, and we killed 3, and one of them was a 16-year-old girl. But she had a Chi-Com submachine gun, so, you know, she's just as dangerous as anybody else. But we did, I don't know whether it was her body or one of them. It was one of those villages I was telling you about that we'd gone through, and no VC. We actually tied a body to the back of a personnel carrier and drug it through the village to show that we killed an ambush, just to try to shock them into saying, you know, tell us, and these people won't die this way. But it was kind of brutal, but we thought it was funny at the time, I guess. But so I was getting short. Like I said, things weren't as bad. This is August and September. Well, I guess August may have been back when we went to Quezon again. Some of the dates get kind of confused, I'm not sure. But right before, when I got short, at the end of my 365 days, the unit got sent up to the DMZ, and they were going to be stationed at Charlie 2, which is another fire base up on the DMZ there. And they left me in the rear to pull the perimeter guard on our section of the perimeter that we guarded, which I thought, this is great. This is my last, like, 3 weeks of Vietnam. And I know when my time came, I still hadn't heard papers or anything, so I would somebody, and they find a radio, and they said, oh, yeah, you need to get up here and sign papers, which meant up to Charlie 2. So I had to get all my stuff and go hitchhike up to the DMZ. So I catch a ride. I finally get to where my unit is. I go in there, and the company clerk's there, and he's doing all the paperwork, and he said, oh, yeah, we got a medal for you. And he throws me my Bronze Star. So that's how I was presented my Bronze Star. He just chunked it to me. Oh, thanks. No ceremony here. But anyway, I turned all my stuff in, including my rifle. So now I got to thumb my way back to Da Nang, I'm Dong Ha, to catch a plane without a weapon. And here, you know, you can live 365 days with a weapon in your hand all the time, and all of a sudden you don't have it, and you still got to go down this long stretch of road up in the DMZ. And let me tell you, that may have been one of my scariest times too, because I finally got with this a truck, a stake-side truck, and I got in the back, and I laid down the back of that sucker because I just did not want to get hit my last day in Vietnam. I know my wife, while I was over there, she went to see Green Beret with John Wayne. The very first scene in the Green Beret, there's a Captain Coleman. He's going home the next day, and he gets killed that night. My wife did not like that movie. But anyway, of course, I made it back okay. There we caught another flight. I remember when that thing lifted off, we all sat there pretty quiet, and as soon as that thing lifted off the ground, the screams broke loose in that aircraft. It was pretty crazy. But, I flew into Fort Lewis, Washington, I guess. And of course, they go in there. We had to put dress screens on. We can't go back home in fatigues. They aren't going to let us wear those jungle fatigues there. So we had to get measured for those before we go home. And then we had to go down and stand and get paid. They gave some money, so I'd go buy an airplane ticket, you know. And they were having an IG, I guess it was. Isn't that what they call them? When they inspect the. So we had to stand outside. Well, I'm standing outside. This, like I said, is a real nice fort. And I got to take a leak. Well, I just started to do it. You know, for 365 days when I needed to go, I just went. And all of a sudden, it hit me. I got to go find a stupid bathroom. So you had to hold it till you find a place. So I thought, well, I guess I got to get civilized again. It's kind of bad. Oh, but, you know, finally, I was going to call my wife when I got to my airport, and then I wasn't. When I got there, I had a flight going pretty quick. It was going to have a 2-hour layover in Denver, so I thought, well, I'll call her from Denver. Well, we flew on in, and we got to Denver, and they said, hey, there's another plane that's late leaving over here. You can catch it and go into Dallas. I thought, sure. So I went and walked right onto the aircraft. Problem was my duffel bag didn't make it. it kind of got lost for a few days. There were some things missing out of it too when I finally got it. But anyway, I flew on then from there at Love Field, Dallas, and called her right there. Told her I was in Dallas, and of course she was with my mother that day. She said my mother just scared to death her driving over there. She wasn't going too slow, but it was, I guess, like I said, the whole deal about, you know, one day I'm over there living like a heathen. In 48 hours, I got to get civilized again. Had to clean up my language a whole lot. But, you know, it was good to be home. And it was Thanksgiving. In fact, I was in Vietnam. The last day I was in Vietnam was Thanksgiving. There was a USO show, and it was some Australians this time that was in the USO show. And so when I got home, after, 18-hour flight and all that, and the next day was Thanksgiving. I got it again because he crossed that date line. That's pretty cool. Well, the nice thing, all the family came over, but I had to watch my mouth. And I know when I did get home, my mother's telling me, my wife's telling me that I got home, and they were all excited. I went back there, took a shower and changed, and laid down on the bed and crashed. My mother said, my wife walked in, he's asleep. Well, put out with me, but you know, I guess I was kind of tired. But from there, we went to Fort Riley, Kansas. I could have extended 45 days in Vietnam, and I could got out of the Army early. Well, since my unit was already up on the DMZ where they were, I thought that 45 days may not be a good idea. And actually, they did okay when they were on the DMZ, but they came back to that beach area, which was usually pretty safe. And I guess we were very lax in that area. And they actually got hit out there on the beach and took some casualties, which I was surprised because no one ever messed with us out there on the beach area. But they did that night, and I guess they knew it's because people weren't up on guard like they should be here, and they were lax-Davy and probably smoking on guard. Who knows what all they did, but lieutenant got busted for it. It wasn't a good thing. So, like I said, that was after I left. While I was in Fort Riley, Kansas, one of the guys in my unit came there too a few months later, and so I kind of got caught up on things from him. But at Kansas, we went into riot control training. There was a lot of riots going on in the United States that time. The Kent incident, Kent State, and all that. So we learned how to get in different positions with bayonets fixed and move crowds. And I thought, man, I hope I don't ever have to go on this thing. You know, we had a war cry of Giga Hippie, and people used to drive through the post and holler peace and gave the peace sign. All these hippies did. Of course, when I got out, I let my hair grow too. But you know. And then one time, of course, I lived off base. I was living with my wife, and whenever we had to go on alert because there was a riot, I had to stay on base to be away from her again. Well, one time, the stupid postmen were threatening to strike, and we went on. We were going to deliver the friggin' mail. So we had to stay close to base in case we had to fly out and deliver mail. And I thought, you don't want a bunch of kids like us delivering mail because stuff's going to go missing. Oh, man. When I first got to Fort Riley, they told me that every year, this is the 24th Infantry Division when I first got there, and every year in February, they went to Germany. And they had, of course, this is a mechanized unit again, and they had a full mechanized unit encased underground. They had all the personnel carriers, tanks, and everything, and mothballs sitting in Germany. And every year they'd go over there and get them all out, go play in the snow for a month, and then put them all back, and then fly back home. And I thought, well, you know, I just got home, and I just now staying with my wife. I really don't want to go. Well, Richard Nixon, Tricky Dick, my bud, sorry, y'all didn't like him, but he did a lot for me. He brought the first, the Big Red One, the 1st Infantry Division, he brought home from Vietnam. He brought it to Fort Riley, Kansas. So we had to put on a show for him. So we canceled our trip to Germany. So I got to stay home so we could put this big fancy show on. I think it was 25 people came home with the colors, is all that came home. All the rest of the unit got put out to other units. So it was a political thing. I don't think he brought home that. Of course, it kept us from sending new guys over, though. Of course, because that was one of the problems of Vietnam I read about, is that about the time a guy got good at what he was doing, they sent him home and replaced him with a rookie. So if a guy had a year's worth of, once he got to know the jungles and not to do his job good, they'd pack him up and send a guy that didn't. So it just helped Ho Chi and all those guys out even more, because they were fighting untrained people, wasn't professional.
You said when you first got in country, you were a rookie with the unit. What were those other guys like? How long had they been there, Carl?
Well, it's really strange. My unit came over as a unit. The 5th Mechanized was out of Fort Carson, Colorado, and what happened was, up in that area around Queen Tree, there was the K-9 Battalion, VC. And at that time, the 1st Cavalry Division controlled that area. And they caught the K-9 Battalion out in that desert, that sandy area. One night they caught them out there moving to hit Queen Tree, I guess, and they caught them out there in the sand. And they brought those choppers in and just annihilated them. I don't know how many they wiped out. And so things got easier on them. So they decided they needed the 1st Cav down south somewhere. I'm not sure where they sent them. And so they packaged up the 5th Mechanized Division out of Fort Carson, Colorado, loaded them on a ship, and sent them over to Vietnam. And I think this may be right after Tet. I think it was. It was after Tet in '67. And that's when the Cav and all of them wiped out the K-9 Battalion. And so the 5th Mech, they unloaded and took over the Northern I Corps, well, with them and the Marines that were still there. So most of those guys had been there, the whole unit had only been there 6 months when I came. I was replacement people for them. So, but those guys had trained together at Fort Carson as a unit, so they were good. And I did notice as the new guys came in, the new sergeants and the new lieutenants, and took over, I did not have the confidence in them as I did those guys that were there when I came. They were good, like I said, because they're training, because they trained as a unit, not just a bunch of people thrown together to create a unit. So, but they didn't treat me bad. It's just I had to hump a lot more weight than they did, and I was not in shape. And those muddy hills just kicked my keister. I was sliding and falling. And if we have time, there was another deal. When I first got there, we were crossing this muddy river. So there was one guy swam across because the bottom was so muddy, he just sank, and stretched a rope across. Well, here I come, the green guy, big rookie, and I'm going like this with the rope across, got my M16 across, this backpack and everything, and I get to the bank, and I put my feet on it, and I'm trying to pull, and as I get my feet on it, my hands slip on of course, I was one of the last ones, so the rope's muddy, and also my hands slipped, so I go backwards, and my feet go up, so now I'm hanging on the rope, my head's underwater, my helmet's filling up with water. Everybody's up on the bank just laughing their keister off at me. They finally dragged me out before I drowned. But yeah, I wasn't too graceful at first.
You mentioned, Carl, the blast from the tank.
Yeah.
Blew you down the hill, rocking your forehead.
Yeah.
They give you a Purple Heart for that?
No, it wasn't. I just rubbed it out. I mean, everybody just pulled it right out. It wasn't.
Okay. No Purple Hearts.
No Purple Hearts. No.
Bronze Star.
Bronze Star and Army Commendation Medal. Got that too from one of the. That was actually presented to me. Somebody pinned that on me. That was kind of nice. We actually had a deal there in Vietnam. We had a ceremony one time, and I got awarded that one. So, and of course all the other, what the Vietnam service and and of course the infantry badge and all that stuff. So.
So you did 2 years total active?
Yep, yeah, 2 years. Yeah, to the day I got out, and then they messed up my pay when I was overseas. When I made the E4, my wife's allotment was supposed to go up to $130. Well, it didn't. So I found out when I got home, and I thought, ooh, they owe us money. So when I get to Kansas, I tell them, they did it, and they looked at the paperwork and says, well, I'll tell you what happened. And he says, I may have this backwards, but I think I got paid out of Indianapolis, and she gets paid out of St. Louis, 2 different bank accounts, And they were supposed to take X amount of money out of my check and they put more with it to pay her. Well, when I made E4, they didn't take that enough money out of my check, so I owed her $200 or $300. So they started taking it out of my check, but she never got it. So my last 6 months there, or 4 months, we were pretty much starving to death. I drained my savings and everything because I was only getting, I don't know, $120 a month plus $60 off, you know. But anyhow, if they finally got it fixed after I got out, but that was kind of a mess. Of course, you know, after I got out, I had a hard time finding a job. Finally found one, and got laid off, and went to work for Martin Sprocket and Gear. And then I went to night school, and VA paid for my degree. You know, so you know, I got that out of it. So it was that part was pretty good. So,
Good.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Busy 2 years, wasn't
Well, it was busy 2 years, yeah. I was surprised I remembered as much as I did sitting here.
Well, we appreciate you coming by. Appreciate you doing the interview, Carl, and certainly appreciate your service.
No,
You bet.
you bet.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.